Wow, the first 4 years of my life was rough. My mom passed away at the age of 17, and I was 1 year old. Unfortunately, my mom was killed by two white men who shot her in the head and dumped her body in an alley, leaving me to be raised by my grandparents who had already had a set of children, 7 children. So I was raised with my aunts and my uncles. And at the age of 4, I experienced my first sexual assault at the hands of my father. Unfortunately, that led him to go to prison, which I, of course, not having an idea that testifying in front of a judge was sending my father to jail. I have to say, some of my special childhood memories was when my uncles would teach me how to drive. So they would take us down some of the back streets and they would sit us on their lap and just let us steer the steering wheel. And I mean, you would have thought we were some race car drivers. We had a ball. Of course, in the summertime, going to the park when they had, the game, the recreations in the park. And then here in the city of Detroit, we had this thing called the Swimmobile. And the Swimmobile, they come and put it on your street, this big old box truck or whatever they called it, and had all of this water in it. And every kid from everywhere would get in it, and we just had a ball. Of course, the health department will probably shut it down today, but it is one of those things that, you really have, those fond memories of childhood, summertime play, playing basketball with the guys. I was straight up tomboy. I loved flipping off the porch. I taught myself how to do backwards flips. Watching the Olympics in the summertime, that was my thing. I was going to be either a track star or I was going to be a gymnast. And another childhood memory, school. Back then, your teachers took you on those great field trips, to the museums or bike trails. And we would go to McDonald's, and you would have thought we was, at Texas Roadhouse or something. Like, we had a good time at McDonald's, just enjoying each other, enjoying life. But back then, they just, teachers and people in the community, they let you just be kids and have fun, no stress, no strain. And you got to play with each other without anybody getting hurt. Transitioning into my teenage years was kind of awkward. So because of the sexual abuse, I developed faster than all of my other female friends at our age. And so, of course, I'm, having a body that's looking like a 18-year-old, and I'm 13. And that just created, some problems. But the transition of even playing with Barbie dolls, my cousin and I used to play with Barbie dolls until the sun came up. On the weekends, we had a ball. We had our Barbie house, the Barbie cars, the remote control vets. And next thing you know, you wake up and you're looking at your Barbie dolls like, what are those? You're looking at your baby dolls like, you don't want to play with those anymore. And now you're talking to boys, you're getting the notes from the boys, do you like me? Yes or no? And it's that now that time where you kind of start getting interested, in boys and how to interact with them. Some of them was nice, some of them was a little awkward, but we had fun, transitioning, and maybe had a little bit too fun because I became a teen mom. At the age of 15, I got pregnant with my son, Emilio, and was in the 9th grade. I was still kind of running track, didn't know what was really happening to my body until, one of my teachers pulled me aside and asked me, was I pregnant? Or better yet, telling me, that I'm pregnant. And, I had to sit out from a lot of the activities that I was used to doing. And then Grandma found out I was pregnant, and, we went to church every day. So, that did not play out good. But, looking back over everything, I believe everything happened for a reason. And unfortunately, I was sent away to a girl's home while I was pregnant with my son, and wasn't allowed to come back home or go back to church for that matter. So here you are, you're that girl who doesn't have a mom, doesn't have a dad, and it's not like your mom is there and she just don't want to be there. She's permanently removed, and not having a father because now he's permanently removed. So now the abandonment, the loneliness, the not feeling the love and support that most children, get from their parents is not there. And so now I am, taking on what people say about me or have said about me. And, whatever boy liked me the most, you kind of, gravitate to people who are giving you some sort of attention, even if it's not the best. Being a teen mother was hard. I had to catch the bus with my son, so I had the cart, had the carrier, I had the diaper bag, my book bag, my gym bag, and standing in the cold trying to catch a bus. And my high school sweetheart, he felt sorry for me, and his parents felt sorry for me, so they helped him buy a car. He worked to buy a car, and they helped him pay for it. And he took me to school. He drove to the other side of town to come get me and my son that was not his, and took us to school. The daycare that my son was going to was right across the street from Mumford High School. And my uncle, one thing my uncle told me, he's like, look, you still got to run track, you still got to play basketball, you still got to keep those grades up. And I still had to do those things. I had to make sure that in the morning I'm getting up, I get up, get myself ready, get my son's diaper bag ready, get his food ready, feed him, get dressed, getting him dressed. Just a lot of organizing and coordination at the age of 15, 16 years old. Before, I graduated from high school, I then had my daughter, Tiara. And so now I have a 2-year-old and a newborn. And I don't know why I thought it was going to be easier, but it wasn't as easy. But at least I was getting ready to graduate from high school. And so once I graduated from high school, I was able to now look forward to, what do I do as a mom to take care of my kids. My early 20s, I started working for a major airline. And one day I'm loading the flight with another teammate. And it was kind of windy out that day. And we were loading a 747 aircraft, which has these large containers that you load on a machine, and then you lift the machine, and then you move the containers into the airplane. Well, the container door of the aircraft gave like an inch. It was enough. Windy day, and it hit me in the top of the head. And unfortunately, it changed the direction of my life. We're 20 feet in the air, and I can see. I know the difference between night and day. I can see, but everything was blurry, and so I'm kind of stepping around and stepping on things until my coworker grabbed me to make sure that I didn't step off. So it got me onto the hospital. A couple of days later, I learned that I had a concussion, and again, in the workplace, no one really teaches you like what to do when you're injured, what's the process, how are you supposed to protect yourself. I'm just trying to work and take care of my family, and unfortunately went through a year of passing out at work, having blackouts. I'm having blackouts at home. I'm heavily medicated because now I have chronic migraines, which it's making it difficult for me to go to sleep. I have constant ringing to this day in my right ear, and a host of other things that was happening. And so they sent me to rehabilitation. And at the time, I was in college and I was studying accounting. And I was making A's and B's. I was the dean's list, accounting. And after my head injury, I went back to college, and it was like Japanese. Like I couldn't remember the formulas. The numbers were like literally dancing across my page. It was starting to freak me out, and I didn't know how to respond to it. So I kept failing. I failed like 3 times, taking the class over and over, until finally my instructor noticed something that was wrong, and I told him, I don't understand I don't understand accounting anymore. So he suggested I go back to my neurologist and share with my neurologist what was happening with my academics. And my neurologist sent me to cognitive rehabilitation, which was the best thing that happened, because through cognitive rehabilitation, they taught me how to read and write all over again. They brought my vocabulary up to a college level. They brought my math back to a college level. It was very hard. I felt alone, and I felt so stupid, because here I am knowing the work, and then I'm going back and I feel totally disconnected from the world. My children had to go live with a nanny because I was having the blackouts at home, and they weren't getting to school. So we felt that the best thing to do was to get a nanny to help me with my children until I can get on my feet. But I was determined to stay in college. I was determined to stay in school. I changed my major to pre-law, and I'm glad that I did, because it taught me so much. Even now, I'm able to use, as a paralegal by trade, I'm still able to use a lot of the things that I've learned from over 30 years ago, dealing with my whole injury. And unfortunately, they came back with I was dyslexic or alexic, because dyslexia is when you're born with it, and alexia is when it comes through a traumatic brain injury. And so I had to learn what dyslexia was and how to deal with it, or how to manage it. And even to this day, it surfaces from time to time, and I have to learn how to use what I was taught years ago to help me manage through it.
Are you looking for tools to overcome grief? Are you finding yourself questioning life after the loss of a child? Well, there's a solution just for you. This 30-day devotional will introduce you to creative, holistic, and practical approaches to conquering grief. Easing the pain, overcoming the loss of a child is for anyone who knows what it feels like to have loved and lost a child. Regardless of the age or reason, the loss of a child can be overwhelming and exhausting. In this book, you will learn how to build your own emotional tool belt that will help you to manage, maintain, survive, and eventually thrive through your grieving journey. Pre-order your signed copy at IamTerraDeFoe.com today.
So in my teen years, I decided to, kind of hang out with some friends, and a married family member introduced me to a gentleman that tried to sex traffic me. I was in the female entertainment industry for 10 years. So from 17 years old to 27, I was in the female entertainment industry. I looked at the female entertainment industry as a way of controlling what happens to my body. I felt like everything that was happening to me, the sexual abuse from my father, I had no control over. the other sexual assaults that I experienced in my teenage years, again, I had no control over. So for me, going into the female entertainment industry was letting off some steam and anger, and also a way to control what happens to Terra. And like I said, I did that for 10 years until my son was getting of age, and a gentleman approached us in the mall and called me by my stage name, and my son said, "That's not my mommy's name. My mommy's name is Terra." And I said, "Yep, it is time for a change." And so I started to get out of the industry, and the last event that I did, which was for a law enforcement agency, unfortunately, I experienced another sexual assault. That moment, I kind of went into a shutdown mode, and it took me a minute to get out of it. But I got rid of everything. If I didn't burn it in the fireplace, threw it out in the trash, and I said I had to make a change. And so I started going to church. My daughter invited me, my baby girl, invited me to come to church with her on Easter, and went to a church, and it was totally not the church that I had experienced growing up. It was totally different. I could actually understand what the Bible was saying, and understanding what the pastor was saying, and so they did this thing that we call prophesying, and they prophesied to me, and I was like, "Who told you?" Like, they knew some stuff, and I'm like, "Somebody told you this." And when I went home, I just started praying, and asking God to forgive me of things that I knew as a child to do, repent. And I just asked God to forgive me and to help me to be a better mother, to be a mother that I didn't get to my children, and to help me to be more stable, and get to a place where I can really experience love, the love that I didn't get growing up. When I rededicated my life, I changed everything. I got out of the female entertainment industry, and I opened up a business called DeFoe Paralegal Services. I pretty much contracted myself out to different law offices and attorneys within the downtown area where I also lived. I was able to write briefing documents. They taught me how to write corporate documents. So they would pay me to do these documents under their supervision. And I was able to, pay the rent, and then eventually open up some office space to where I had clients being able to come in. My grandmother turned me on to grant writing. My grandmother was legally blind, but she knew how to put the pieces together. And so she got me involved into nonprofit grant development or nonprofit development, and introducing me to different people who then began to show me how nonprofit works, but also how you do it for faith-based organizations. I started contracting myself out to various faith-based organizations, writing 501c3s, writing programs for them or creating programs, and doing grant writing. And then eventually I got into teaching grant writing as time went on. The other part to that was I met a gentleman who introduced me to politics. I come from a family of politicians. And I remember growing up as a kid, how we used to go door to door, put flyers on the people's doors and tell them to vote, vote for my uncle. And not really putting that all together as an adult. And so when the gentleman introduced me to politics, I was like, no, everybody's crooked. And he's like, no, not everybody, And so he sent me to various campaign camps, weekend camps at different universities across the state, where I was able to learn campaign financing, campaign management, and fundraising. And so came back to Michigan and wrote a program to where we then, our organization, started doing training candidates on how to run effective campaigns. And so it all started to just kind of like come together. Next thing you know, I get an interview at the Michigan House of Representatives, and I have no car. And the House of Representatives is in our state capital, Lansing, Michigan, which is like an hour 30 minutes from Detroit. And I have no car. I borrowed $60 from a friend. He gave me $60. I bought a Greyhound bus ticket, and I had a little bit left over to buy me lunch. And I went up to Lansing on a Greyhound bus in my suit, some gym shoes. I put my dress shoes in a purse. I had my little braids, so I, put my braids in a ponytail. And right before I got on the bus, one of my best friends gave me a book to read, and it was called Effective Communication. And so I have nothing but time, right? So I'm reading, what does it say about effective communication? And it talks about, the ability to talk to people one-on-one, and the benefits of talking to people one-on-one. And it talks about all the different styles of communicating. So I get to Lansing, I have lunch, I go to my interview, change my shoes, take my hair down and just freshen up, and I go into the interview space, and the gentleman that's interviewing me is telling me what the job is, and how, he sees me playing a role if I'm hired. And he says, what do you think is the best method of communication? And I'm like, okay, Lord, like who could have wrote that script, right? And, and I go to tell him, I think the best method of communication is, direct, one-on-one. And he's like, I tell everybody that's the best. So after the interview, I'm on my way home from Lansing on the Greyhound bus, and I get a call that they offer me the position. And of course I accept because I'm excited, And then reality sits in. Terra, you don't have a car. How are you going to get to work every day? Because you can't take the Greyhound bus. And so I had some clients that kind of owed me some money, and I was just praying like, Lord, let something come through. And I had an individual who was supposed to have deeded me a house. Because they couldn't pay for the services. So they were technically giving me a home. And I went to go sell the home, but it was a whole lot of, just foolishness with selling the home. And finally, we were able to close. I got the call for closing when I got home from the job interview. So when I closed, I went to deposit the check. And once that check cleared, I went and bought a car. And everything happened like within a week's time. And that, when I tell you, God did something for me. I did not have the ability to trust anything or anybody. I think the only people I really trusted was my kids. And it was a moment where I realized like the God of my childhood was not this mean man that was sitting in heaven, and every time you did something wrong, he was judging and punishing you for not getting it right. But yet he was loving on you to help you, show you, and bring out the gifts that he gave you. And it was an experience that I'm just like, why wasn't I taught about that God? Why am I now here in this stage of my life now learning like how much God loves me, and how much if I just trust him and commit my ways and commit my plans to him, he would take them and do way more than what I could ever ask or think. I didn't think I would even be given the opportunity to work in our state capitol. And so worked in Lansing, worked for governors, worked on different campaigns, came down, worked for senators, came and worked for a man who wanted to run for mayor. That was a all-star basketball Hall of Famer. and local businessman that decided to run for mayor. And my first time being introduced to him, I didn't know who he was. I had to actually ask my grandmother, who is Dave Bing? And she had to tell me who he was. And it was a pleasure and it was an honor to work with him as he ran for mayor. And my role and responsibility was to handle faith-based and senior citizens. And within a year, we had 4 elections. And he won all 4. And so when he became mayor, he asked me to join his administrative staff, and the rest was just like picture perfect. I was able to do a lot in our community, for our community, create programs for nonprofits and our senior citizens, and working with young people. We just had a collaboration of teammates that we all just wanted to see good for our city. And then I moved on to work for 2 TV Christian television networks, which gave me a different side of things, because you watch television, but you don't see all the work that happens behind the scenes. And working with those 2 television networks gave me the opportunity to see what actually happens behind the scene. And then I started my own television show called On the Floor with Dr. Terra DeFoe, and it has been going well. I'm hearing this, but I'm like, I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience, because it's like I'm hearing it, but I'm not hearing it. I'm like, my son just talked to me on Monday, and here we are now, Wednesday. Your son is possibly dying, and I can't touch him because he is still property of the Michigan Department of Corrections.
Dr. Terra DeFoe is pleased to announce the launch of a book project that is personally near and dear to her heart. Easing the Pain, Overcoming the Loss of a Child is for every woman who knows what it's like to have loved and lost a child. Regardless of the age or reason, the loss of any child can be overwhelming and exhausting. But when a parent has to bury their child, the measure of grief can be intensified and seems like it's too much to bear. Unfortunately, many people in society discount the measure of grief when a parent loses an adult child versus a minor. But for those parents, there's not only healing, there is hope. In this candid literary masterpiece, author Dr. Terra DeFoe takes readers on a journey of self-discovery, healing, and wholeness after such a great loss. Equipping readers with pivotal tools to build their own tool belt, she strategically helps readers manage, maintain, survive, and eventually thrive through the good and challenging times that are sure to come and go unexpectedly. Pre-order your signed copy at IamTerraDeFoe.com today.